Welcome to Zoe Stories. Magician's trick turned me into his assistant, forever. I never believed in magic. Not in the way most people did, anyway. Sure, I enjoyed watching magicians perform, but I saw it for what it was, an illusion, a clever distraction. I took pride in spotting the tricks, the sleight of hand, the misdirection. That was just the way my mind worked. Logical, analytical, grounded. Which is why, to this day, I still can't explain what happened that night. My name is Mark Holloway. I was 24 at the time, just an ordinary guy with an ordinary life. I worked a desk job, spent weekends gaming with my friends, and had a pretty straightforward outlook on the world. Magic wasn't real. That was a fact. But all it took was one mistake, one stupid decision, to turn my world upside down. It started as a dare. A group of us had gone out that evening, looking for something to do. Bars? Too crowded. Clubs? Not our scene. Then one of my friends, Jake, spotted the poster. The Amazing Lorenzo, one night only. I rolled my eyes. A magician? Really? Oh, come on, Jake grinned. It'll be fun. I wasn't convinced, but everyone else was on board. So, against my better judgment, I went along with it. The venue was small, just a modest theater tucked between two office buildings. Inside, the stage was set with dark velvet curtains, dim lighting, and an air of mystery. It smelled faintly of incense and old wood, like something out of another era. Lorenzo himself was unexpected. Tall, dressed in a sleek black coat, his presence filled the room the moment he stepped onto the stage. He had a way of making you feel like he could see right through you, like he knew all your secrets. His performance was polished, his tricks seamless. But I was determined to figure them out. Then came the moment that changed everything. For my next act, Lorenzo announced, scanning the audience, I need a volunteer. Jake nudged me. Go on. Let's see if he can fool you. I smirked, shaking my head. No way. But the others joined in, chanting my name, daring me. Come on, Mark. What's the worst that could happen? Reluctantly, I stood. The crowd cheered as I made my way to the stage, and Lorenzo gave me a knowing smile. This trick, he said, draping a shimmering silk cloth over my shoulders, is about transformation. The moment he said the word, something shifted in the air. I felt it before I understood it, a tingling sensation, creeping through my body. My limbs felt light, my skin warm. A strange dizziness washed over me, and for the first time that night, I felt real fear. And then, he pulled the cloth away. The audience gasped. I staggered back. Something was wrong. Something was different. The moment my eyes met my reflection in the stage mirror, my breath caught in my throat. The person staring back at me wasn't Mark Holloway. It was a woman. My body, my face, my entire being changed. Panic surged through me. I spun to face Lorenzo, my voice trembling. What did you do to me? He just smiled. And that was when I realized this was no ordinary trick. The stage lights felt unbearably hot against my skin. My breath came in short, panicked bursts as I stared at my reflection. This wasn't an illusion. I could feel everything. The gentle pull of long hair against my back. The weight of my chest rising and falling with each breath. My clothes, now hanging awkwardly, too loose in some places, too tight in others, felt alien on my frame. My shoes slipped slightly, my feet now smaller, delicate. Even my hands, trembling as I raised them to my face, were thinner, softer. The audience erupted in laughter and applause, oblivious to the sheer horror clawing at my chest. To them, this was just another one of Lorenzo's brilliant tricks. But I knew better. I turned to him, my voice shaky, higher-pitched, wrong. What the hell did you do to me? Lorenzo tilted his head, a knowing smirk playing at his lips. I transformed you, just as promised. My stomach twisted.
No.
No, this isn't possible. My voice cracked, my throat tightening with panic. Change me back. Right now. He folded his hands behind his back, his expression unreadable. I'm afraid it's not that simple. Something inside me snapped. I lunged forward, grabbing the front of his jacket. Not that simple. Undo it. Whatever you did, fix it. But he didn't flinch. He didn't even look surprised. If anything, he looked amused. I will, he said smoothly, but not yet. I froze. What do you mean, not yet? Lorenzo stepped back, gently prying my hands off his jacket. He gestured to the audience, who were still whispering excitedly, enthralled by the illusion. Look at them, he said softly. They believe in the magic. His gaze flicked back to me. And you are proof of its power. I didn't care about the audience. I didn't care about magic. I cared about one thing, getting my body back. I turned on my heel, storming off stage, ignoring the confused murmurs from the crowd. My legs felt strange, unfamiliar. My center of gravity had shifted, making every step feel slightly off balance. I was hyper-aware of every inch of my body, every sensation. Backstage, I found a dimly lit dressing room with a full-length mirror. I slammed the door shut behind me and braced myself. I needed to see. I needed to know just how bad this was. With shaking hands, I pulled off my oversized shirt and stepped closer to the mirror. The woman staring back at me was me. But not me. She had my eyes, still wide with panic, but everything else was different. Softer features, delicate cheekbones, lips slightly fuller. My jawline had lost its sharpness, replaced with gentle curves. My shoulders were narrower, my waist cinched, my hips rounding out in a way that felt completely foreign. My hands hovered over my stomach before moving upward, hesitating before brushing against the unfamiliar weight on my chest. The touch sent a shiver down my spine. This was real. I squeezed my eyes shut, pressing my palms against the cool surface of the mirror as if I could somehow push my reflection away. I had to think. I had to figure this out. But my mind was a storm of fear and disbelief. I couldn't go home like this. I couldn't walk into work like this. I couldn't live like this. Could I? A sudden, horrifying thought hit me like a freight train. What if this was permanent? I gritted my teeth, my nails digging into my palms. No. I wouldn't accept that. There had to be a way back. A knock at the door made me jump. Are you ready to talk? Lorenzo's voice was smooth, patient, like he already knew what I was going to say. I spun around, my heart hammering. Why are you doing this to me? He stepped inside, shutting the door behind him. Because you don't believe in magic. I let out a breathless, bitter laugh. Yeah? Well, I sure as hell believe in it now. Lorenzo smiled. Good. Then you're ready for the next step. My stomach twisted. Next step? He leaned against the doorframe, studying me. You want to be changed back? Obviously. Then you'll have to earn it. The words sent a chill down my spine. What are you talking about? I need an assistant. He folded his arms. Someone to help with my performances. Someone who embodies the magic. His gaze flicked down to me, then back up. You, my dear, fit the role perfectly. I took a step back, shaking my head. No. No way. 1 year, he said simply. 1 year as my assistant, and I'll change you back. The room felt smaller, closing in around me. I searched his face for any sign of deception, but all I saw was certainty. A year. 365 days in a body that wasn't mine. The alternative? I swallowed hard, my pulse pounding in my ears. Did I really have a choice? I sat in the dimly lit dressing room, my legs pulled up against my chest, my mind racing. A year. Lorenzo's words echoed in my head like a curse. 1 year as his assistant, and then he would change me back. The offer was absurd, manipulative. But was it really an offer? It felt more like a demand, a trap I had walked into willingly, all because of my arrogance. I couldn't do this. But what was my alternative? My phone. The thought hit me like a jolt of electricity. I still had my phone. I scrambled for my pocket, only to realize my jeans, Mark's jeans, no longer fit right. The waistband barely held onto my new, smaller frame. After fumbling for a few seconds, I yanked my phone free and unlocked it. Jake. I needed to call Jake. My fingers shook as I scrolled through my contacts, then hesitated. What the hell was I supposed to say? Hey man, it's me, Mark. I got turned into a woman. Long story. Help. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. I needed to hear a familiar voice. Someone who would tell me I wasn't losing my mind. I pressed the call button. It rang. Once. Twice. Then, hey, this is Jake. Leave a message. A voicemail. Of course. I clenched my jaw, exhaling shakily. The words got stuck in my throat, and I hung up without saying anything. A heavy silence filled the room. I was on my own. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to ground myself. My reflection in the mirror mocked me. The girl staring back looked as lost and terrified as I felt. This couldn't be happening. I had to get out of here. Heart pounding, I stood up and stormed toward the door, yanking it open. But the hallway outside was empty. The stage was dark now, the audience gone. The only light came from a neon exit sign glowing red at the far end. I made a beeline for it. The second I stepped outside, the night air hit me, cool against my overheated skin. The city streets stretched out before me, familiar, yet foreign. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. Then I froze. My wallet. My ID. They all said Mark Holloway. I reached into my pocket and pulled it out. My driver's license stared back at me. The photo was the same, my old self. But if I tried to use this, would anyone even believe me? Panic surged through me again. I couldn't go home like this. My roommate would freak out. My coworkers, God, what would they think? And then there was my family. A sudden wave of nausea rolled over me. If I went to them, if I told them, would they believe me? Or would they think I had lost my mind? I gripped the wallet so tightly my knuckles ached. I needed a plan. Leaving so soon? I spun around, heart hammering. Lorenzo stood in the theater doorway, his coat draped over his shoulders, his expression unreadable. He looked completely at ease, as if he had expected this. As if he knew I would try to run. My voice caught, still jarringly unfamiliar. I can't do this. His head tilted slightly. You can't do what exactly? This. I gestured wildly at myself. This body. This nightmare. You can't seriously expect me to just accept this. Lorenzo sighed, stepping closer. I didn't expect you to accept it immediately. That would be unrealistic. I took a step back, then changed me back. His lips curled into a slight smile. No. Fury surged through me. I wanted to scream. I wanted to hit something. Instead, I took a shaky breath. Why? Because, he said simply, you still don't understand. Understand what? He studied me for a long moment, then said, magic isn't about tricks. It's about belief. And right now, you're standing at the crossroads of something bigger than yourself. My hands clenched into fists. I don't care about magic. I just want my life back. He exhaled softly, almost as if he pitied me. Then earn it. The words sent a chill down my spine. I shook my head, laughing bitterly. You're insane. No, Lorenzo said. I'm offering you a choice. Stay and learn. Become my assistant. Or walk out that door and figure out how to explain your new reality to the world. My stomach dropped. The truth hit me like a ton of bricks. I had no options. I couldn't go home. I couldn't go back to my old life. Not like this. And he knew it. My breath came in shaky gasps as I glanced between him and the street beyond. The world outside felt impossibly vast, impossibly dangerous. If I left now, I'd be walking into chaos, unprepared. But if I stayed, I swallowed hard. I had just lost everything. My body, my identity, my sense of control. And yet, as I met Lorenzo's gaze, I realized something even more terrifying. I was about to lose myself. I stood frozen beneath the flickering streetlight, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it might break free from my chest. The city stretched out before me. Endless streets, bustling people, the comforting hum of normal life. A life that no longer belonged to me. Behind me, Lorenzo watched in silence, waiting. I had a choice. Or, at least, that's what he wanted me to believe. I could walk away. I could step into the world as I was now, a stranger in my own skin, and try to reclaim what had been stolen from me. Try to convince my friends, my family, anyone who would listen, that I was me. That this was some horrible mistake. But what would happen when I opened my mouth and the wrong voice came out? What would happen when I handed over my ID and the picture didn't match? Would they believe me? Would they think I was lying? Would they think I was crazy? The cold air bit at my skin, but I barely felt it. My fingers curled tighter around my wallet, as if squeezing it hard enough could somehow tether me back to reality. If I left, I would be on my own. No home, no job, no identity. Just her. The woman in the mirror. The one I didn't recognize. The one I was. A tremor ran through me, deep and unshakable. Then there was the other option. Lorenzo's voice drifted back into my mind. 1 year as my assistant, and I'll change you back. It sounded so simple.
A year.
365 days. It wasn't forever, but it was long enough to change me. Long enough to make me forget what it felt like to be Mark. I turned back toward him slowly, my legs stiff, weak. My body still felt like a costume I hadn't learned to wear. He was watching me closely, his face unreadable. I hated him. I hated him for doing this to me, for stealing my body, my life, for making this my choice. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. If I say yes, what happens next? Lorenzo's lips curled slightly, just a hint of satisfaction creeping in. Then we begin. His words sent another wave of nausea rolling through me. I wanted to scream. I wanted to punch him in the face, wipe that smug expression away, make him hurt the way I was hurting. But I couldn't. I was too exhausted. Too lost. Too trapped. What if I refuse? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Lorenzo tilted his head slightly. Then you walk away. And you face the world as you are. A chill ran down my spine. There was no real choice. Either I threw myself into the unknown, hoping I could somehow survive, or I surrendered, stepped into the role he had created for me, played his game, and waited for my chance to reclaim what was mine. My fingers twitched at my sides. I already knew what I had to do. It didn't make it any easier to say. I took a deep, shuddering breath, the words catching in my throat before I finally forced them out. Fine. The moment I said it, something in me broke. A crack in the dam holding back all the fear, the anger, the overwhelming wrongness of it all. Lorenzo's eyes gleamed. Good choice. I clenched my jaw. Don't, my voice wavered. Don't act like I wanted this. He only smiled, stepping aside, gesturing toward the open theater door. A final invitation. A final warning. I glanced back at the city one last time. Then I stepped inside. The moment I stepped back inside the theater, the door swung shut behind me with a soft but definitive click. It felt disturbingly final, like the sound of a key turning in a lock. Lorenzo walked ahead without another word, leading me through the dim backstage corridors. My heartbeat drummed in my ears. My breathing was shallow, each step heavier than the last. This was happening. I had agreed to this. And now my life as Mark Holloway was slipping away with every step I took. We emerged into a dressing room. The bright bulbs around the mirror buzzed faintly, illuminating a space cluttered with costumes, brushes, powders, and props. A red velvet chair sat in front of the vanity, an executioner's chair, as far as I was concerned. Lorenzo gestured to it. Sit. I hesitated. My legs didn't want to move. My mind screamed at me to turn and run. But where would I even go? After a shaky breath, I forced myself forward, lowering into the chair like it might swallow me whole. Lorenzo stood behind me, his reflection hovering just over my shoulder. Your transformation isn't complete, he said, his voice smooth, measured. You look the part, but you don't move like her. You don't think like her. I gritted my teeth. Because I'm not her. Lorenzo smiled in the mirror. Not yet. He reached for the vanity and plucked up a brush, running it through my hair with slow, deliberate strokes. The sensation sent shivers down my spine. It was such a simple thing, yet I had never experienced it like this before. My new hair was long, silky, unnervingly delicate. "I don't need this," I muttered, gripping the arms of the chair. "Just tell me what you want me to do." Lorenzo chuckled. "Patience, my dear. You're not ready to perform yet."
Perform.
The word made my stomach twist. I wasn't Mark anymore. Not in the ways that mattered. The world would see something different when they looked at me. Someone different. "Stand up," Lorenzo instructed. I obeyed, though my body still felt foreign. Too small. Too light. He walked over to a wardrobe and flung open the doors. Inside were rows of costumes, sequined bodysuits, flowing gowns, corsets that looked like they belonged in another century. My throat went dry at the sight of them. He skimmed through the options before plucking out a sleek black dress. "This will do." I stared at it, then at him, then back at it. "No," my voice came out sharper than I intended. Lorenzo arched a brow. "No." I crossed my arms, though the movement felt wrong with my smaller frame. "You said I'd be your assistant, not your doll." Lorenzo chuckled, utterly unbothered by my resistance. "You misunderstand. The assistant in a magician's act is part of the illusion. The audience must be captivated by you just as much as they are by me." He held the dress up against me, as if sizing me up. "You want them to believe in magic? Then you must become it." I hated that his words made sense. I hated that a small part of me, the part that still thought logically, strategically, knew he was right. If I was going to survive this, if I was going to play this role until I found a way out, I had to sell it. I swallowed hard. My fingers trembled as I took the dress from him. "Good girl," Lorenzo murmured approvingly, and something in me bristled. I clenched my jaw, but didn't argue. Not yet. Instead, I turned away, gripping the fabric tightly as I made my way to the changing screen. The moment I was alone, the reality of it all crashed down on me again. I had to strip. I had to take off my clothes, Mark's clothes, and replace them with something entirely foreign. I inhaled sharply. My hands shook as I pulled off my shirt, my skin hypersensitive to the air against it. I avoided looking down, avoided acknowledging what had changed. Next were the jeans. They pulled at my feet too easily, my legs now slim, my hips unfamiliar. I squeezed my eyes shut, gripping the fabric of the dress like a lifeline. This wasn't me. This wasn't me. But when I slipped the dress over my head, when the fabric hugged my frame, it became undeniable. The girl in the mirror wasn't some illusion. She was me. Lorenzo's voice called from the other side of the screen. "Come out." I hesitated. A deep, painful inhale. A slow, reluctant step forward. I emerged into the room, my arms wrapped around myself, my face burning. Lorenzo's eyes scanned me, his expression unreadable. Then he smiled. Perfect. The word made my stomach churn. I wasn't perfect. I was a man trapped in a stranger's body, standing in a dress I never should have worn, living a life I never asked for. But when I looked at the mirror again, that truth felt farther away. Like it was slipping. Like I was slipping. The stage lights were blinding. A dozen spotlights burned down on me, their heat sinking into my skin as the audience's murmurs filled the theater like a restless tide. My pulse thundered in my ears. My fingers curled into my palms so tightly my nails nearly broke the skin. This was it. This was my debut as her. As Celeste. Lorenzo's assistant. Not Mark. Never Mark again. I stood in the center of the stage, my body stiff, wrapped in a sapphire gown that shimmered with every breath. I felt like a mannequin draped in expensive fabric, painted, polished, but hollow. Somewhere in the audience, people were watching me, admiring me. They didn't see a man lost in a stranger's body. They saw elegance. Mystery. They saw a woman. I swallowed hard. Lorenzo's voice boomed through the theater, smooth and practiced, the voice of a man who owned the room without trying. Ladies and gentlemen, what you see before you is not an illusion. It is not a trick. His gloved hand lifted toward me, and I felt the invisible chains tightening around my wrists, binding me to this role. Celeste is living proof that magic is real. A hush rippled through the crowd. Lorenzo moved behind me, his presence a looming shadow. For our grand finale, my dear assistant will vanish before your very eyes. My stomach twisted. I hadn't rehearsed this. I glanced at him sharply, but his face was unreadable, his smile thin and knowing. He raised a single brow, daring me to break character. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction. A large, ornate box stood at the center of the stage. Black lacquered wood, gold trim. The kind of thing you'd see in a magician's act 100 times over. But I knew better than to trust anything Lorenzo presented as just a trick. He extended his hand toward the box. A cue. A command. I hesitated for only a breath before stepping forward, my heels clicking against the stage. My movements were smooth now, practiced. A far cry from the hesitant, clumsy steps of the person I had been when this nightmare began. I slipped inside the box. The doors swung shut. Darkness swallowed me. My breathing was shallow, rapid. The murmurs of the crowd were muffled now, just a distant hum beyond the wooden walls. I wanted to believe this was a standard trick, that any second now, Lorenzo would open the doors, and I'd be standing somewhere else, perfectly unharmed. But I knew better. A whisper slid through the darkness, just loud enough for me to hear. "You've played your part beautifully." Lorenzo's voice. It came from everywhere and nowhere, curling around me like invisible hands. I reached out, pressing against the box. The wood was smooth beneath my fingertips, cold. "But every assistant must make a choice," he continued. The floor beneath me shifted. A sinking feeling. I gasped. It was as if the stage itself had melted away, the walls of the box stretching into something endless. Then, a pull. A force I couldn't describe, like being unraveled from the inside out. I clutched my chest, a strangled cry escaping my lips. Then silence. Weightlessness. A heartbeat later, the doors burst open. And I was standing center stage, once more. The audience erupted into applause, cheers rolling over me like a crashing wave. But something was wrong. Lorenzo stood beside me, bowing deeply, his expression victorious. I turned to him, my breath hitching. "What did you?" The sound of my own voice froze me in place. It was perfect, refined, feminine, not forced, not awkward, not fake. Panic surged up my throat. I turned, eyes darting wildly across the audience. Their faces were alight with wonder, admiration. They weren't looking at a magician's assistant. They were looking at a star, a performer who had always been here, a woman who had never been anyone else. I stumbled back, my hands shaking. Lorenzo caught my wrist. "Careful, Celeste," he murmured, his voice soft, yet heavy with finality. "We wouldn't want you to ruin the show." I wrenched my arm away, but the moment I did, I saw it. The reflection in the polished surface of the stage. A woman stood there. Beautiful. Poised. Effortless. Me. Not an imposter. Not a disguise. I lifted my hand, and so did she. Every movement was seamless, fluid. No hesitation. No disconnect. The truth hit me like a knife to the chest. There was no going back. Not because I had agreed to this. Not because I had been forced. But because Mark Holloway was gone. Because Celeste wasn't just a role. She was real. And I had no choice but to be her. The applause had long since faded, but the echoes still lingered in my mind. Days had passed since that night. Since the moment I stepped off the stage and realized there was no Mark Holloway left to return to. I sat before the vanity in my dressing room, staring at the woman in the mirror. The woman who had, somehow, become me. Celeste. She wasn't a costume. She wasn't a trick. She was real. My hands no longer trembled when I traced the soft curve of my jaw, when I adjusted the delicate earrings that hung from my ears. There was no panic when I smoothed a hand over the elegant dress that clung to my form. It should have terrified me. It didn't. Because somehow, in ways I couldn't explain, This felt natural. I had fought it, resisted it, told myself this was a prison, a punishment, a cruel joke played by a magician who had stolen my life. But had he? Or had he simply revealed something that had been waiting beneath the surface all along? A knock at the door pulled me from my thoughts. "Celeste," Lorenzo's voice came, smooth as ever. "The audience is waiting." A part of me hesitated. The other part, stronger now, undeniable, rose from the chair, straightened my posture, and smiled. Yes, they were waiting for me, and I was ready. Thank you for joining us on another captivating journey through Zoe's stories. Remember to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a tale. Until next time, keep exploring, keep imagining, and keep believing in the magic of storytelling. See you in the next chapter.